There once lived a princess named Amara, who was not just any princess but was imbued with a power so profound that it could alter the fate of the kingdom. Yet, for most of her life, she walked in disguise among her people, her true strength known only to her father, King Obiagelu. Amara was a fierce warrior at heart, capable of conjuring elements with a mere flick of her wrist. However, at first, she decided to hide her true self from everyone, including her father the king, until one fateful day. The princess, her father, and some guards had gone to a nearby kingdom for a ceremony. On their way home, they were ambushed by warriors from the kingdom they had just visited. King Obiagelu was a great ruler who had won several kingdoms in battle, gaining the reputation of being the greatest king of his time. He had several kingdoms under his control. This he achieved through warfare. During that time, any kingdom that lost a battle became subordinate to the winning kingdom. King Obiagelu, having equipped himself with powerful warriors, had won many kingdoms in battle, making him ruler over them and, consequently, an enemy of the few remaining free kingdoms. He never imagined that the kingdom they had paid a friendly visit to would turn against him. Because it was meant to be a peaceful visit, he didn't bother to take his strongest warriors. Unfortunately, they were met with an overwhelming force. The king, usually confident in his guards, knew this time was different. These men were fiercer and stronger than those he had brought. His soldiers fought valiantly, but one by one, they fell before the ferocious enemy. The king alone could not defeat them, but he could not let his guard down, so he moved with force to fight them as best as he could. The princess watched from her horse, her heart heavy with a mixture of fear and rage. When her father was captured, she could no longer remain hidden. She had to act, or her father would be imprisoned by these men. Her heart racing with determination, she charged forward and slayed the warriors one by one. Obiagelu turned back as he felt the grips around him drop simultaneously. To his greatest surprise, he found his daughter standing before him with her sword. "What just happened?" he asked, waiting for an explanation. "Well, father, I apologize for hiding this from you. I am not the weak princess people think I am. This is who I truly am. I knew that if I told you, you wouldn't allow me to partake in battles," she said, lowering her gaze and hiding her face from her father. The king could not believe what he was hearing. He asked, "Since when did you realize you had this talent?" "Since I was little," she replied. "The truth is that I am the Alikiaba you have been wanting to meet." Alikiaba was a mysterious figure who had been protecting King Obiagelu in battles and from enemy attacks. But the king had never seen their face. When his guards couldn't find the person after months of searching, they gave him the name Alikiaba, meaning hidden savior in their language. "So, it has been my daughter all along? Why hide this from your father?" Obiagelu asked. He hugged her. "The rewards I have kept all these years shall be given to you at once," he said. But the princess disagreed. "No, father," she said. "I want to remain undercover. No one should know about me." The king agreed with her in order to protect her from becoming an enemy target. Her father rode the horse as they headed home, keeping up appearances. The people still believed her to be the weak girl who could not ride an ordinary horse. From that day on, her power became a secret known only to her and the king. To protect her identity while still utilizing her extraordinary gifts, he appointed her as the royal warrior's cook, one who prepared their meals and medicines during battles. It was a seemingly mundane role that allowed her to stay close to the action while remaining unseen. Years later, the king's staff of authority went missing. When the king discovered it had been stolen by King Aya, he tried several ways to retrieve it. But King Aya was a very dangerous ruler and wiped out all the people King Obiagelu had sent. When the princess learned about this, she promised her father that she would bring back the staff. But to do so, she needed to enter King Aya's palace and become one of them, considering how deadly he was. "How would you do that?" her father asked. "By becoming his wife," she replied. The king refused, but the princess insisted. He was afraid the princess would not survive, for King Aya was not just physically strong but was also magical and diabolical. One day, there was a chess tournament among the kings. In these games, the kings bet on anything their opponents demanded, and the winner took all. King Obiagelu, the princess's father, was the reigning chess champion and was challenged by King Aya. King Aya placed a bet on marrying the princess if Obiajalu lost. Obiajalu refused, but the princess, without wasting time, agreed. She wanted to restore her father's honor before the people discovered he had lost such a precious item. If Obiajalu bet on the staff of authority, the people would know, and many of his enemies would use that as a chance to attack. So he bet on something else. While the game was ongoing, the princess, knowing her father would win, and that this would ruin her plans to retrieve the staff, rushed in at a critical point and distracted him, causing him to lose to King Aya. This was a shock to everyone. For the first time Obiajalu is losing his game. Everywhere became unexpectedly quiet. The most confusing thing was how the princess made her father lose. "Is like the princess had an eye for King Aya," one of the men gathered said. "Who would ever have an eye for a devil like Aya?" another replied. "But it's obvious she did it on purpose. Can't you see she is already prepared to go with them?" King Obiajalu stood still as he watched her daughter jump onto King Aya's horse. He wanted to stop them, but a bet is a bet, and he could not go back to his words to maintain his reputation. He knew his daughter wise and smart, but he's still scared something bad might happen to her. King Aya took the princess like a slave and went home. His plan was to render her useless by allowing his men to sleep with her one after the other, after which he would disgrace her publicly and kill her. He believed this would mark the downfall of King Obiajalu, as people would no longer trust a king who raised such an irresponsible girl. But little did he know, the princess had her own plans. The princess followed them obediently as they rode home. The journey was long, but the princess never looked weak. She was focused and energetic all through the journey, never showed any sign of disappointment. All you can see in her eyes was determination. After they arrived at King Aya's palace, he threw a banquet comprising 20 of his men, himself, and the princess, and she was the only woman in their midst. He instructed his men to drug her wine and do with her whatever they wished once he pretended to fall asleep. They drugged the wine and handed it to her, but the princess, in her wisdom, switched it with King Aya's. After drinking, the king fell asleep, while the princess sat comfortably, smiling while sipping her wine. The men, thinking everything was going according to plan, prepared to act. One of them moved slowly toward her with a wicked look, ready to devour her. To his surprise, the princess did not move, she just smiled, and the next moment, he found himself on the ground, lifeless. Another guard attacked from behind, but in the blink of an eye, all the men began to fight one another to the death. This was the princess's doing, she had cast a spell on them. She sat calmly, drinking and watching as they fought and killed each other. They all killed themselves except for Oja, who was the one man standing. He appeared to be the strongest of them all. When the princess saw that others are all dead, she cast another spell on him and commanded him to take her to the king's secret chamber. The guard obeyed. As they walked through the palace and past other guards, they all bowed in respect, because the man with her was the king's second in command. They respected him as they would do to the king himself. They entered the king's chamber. There, the princess saw her father's staff of authority lying on the king's throne. As a woman, she could not touch it because doing so would mean death. So she commanded the guard to pick it up for her, which he did without hesitation. Then she ordered him to follow and guard her out of the palace. He took her by the hand, and they walked through the 10 gates leading out of the palace. No one dared stop them, for none could question Oja, the king's right-hand man. The journey was smooth. But just as they reached the last gate, they heard the king sound the emergency alarm, ordering the gates to be sealed. She knew the king must have awoken and would soon come after them. The men at the entrance gate were many, too many for her to fight alone. So she manipulated Oja, instructing him to tell them not to fire. When he spoke, the guards stood still, and they passed through the gate. On the other side, however, the guards received a direct order from the king to fire. They released their weapons, but it was too late. She used Oja to block the arrow that would have struck her. Immediately, she magically sealed the gate and leapt onto Oja's horse, riding away at a great speed. Knowing they were coming after her in great numbers and that she wouldn't be able to fight them and protect her father's staff of authority alone, the princess knew she had to secure the staff first before fully facing King Aya and his men. She caught a bird and sent a signal to her father, hoping to receive support as soon as possible. The journey was still long, and they could catch up with her sooner or later. By the time her father would receive the message and sent reinforcements, either his men would arrive first, or King Aya and his army would. King Aya could not understand what had happened. He found all his men dead and assumed Ojah's greed had led him to kill the others so he could take the princess for himself. That, he believed, was why Ojah helped her escape. He still thought the princess was weak and lacked the power to defeat his men, but with Ojah by her side, his army would be in greater danger. So, he followed them, because he knew that only he could defeat Ojah. But his perception changed when he reached the gate and found Ojah lying lifeless in front of the gate. That meant the princess was now alone and hadn't gone far. Go after her, search within. She hasn't gone far, he ordered. He remembered that the princess could not ride a horse when they were coming. Little did he know she had only pretended to hide her strength. You must find her, she is still within and can't ride a horse. You must find her, he instructed. His men went out in search of the princess but found no trace. They returned and told King Aya she must have gone far, but he didn't believe them. He sent them again. All this delay bought the princess more time to move farther ahead, and it also gave her father's men time to catch up with her. Meanwhile, the king's soldiers who had been guarding the 10th gate were fast approaching, having followed her immediately. Back at King Aya's palace, he sat in his courtyard, trusting his men to return with the princess. But the news he received shocked him and pushed him to the edge. One of his guards came running and collapsed before him, panting. What is the problem, Imanike? The king asked. Speak, he ordered. The guard reported that all the 10th gate men were dead, killed by the princess. What princess? Aya asked in disbelief. That girl with no strength or power. The one who can't even ride an ordinary horse? How can she defeat the strongest of my men? But the guard insisted. My king, the princess is no ordinary girl. She seems to be a powerful warrior in disguise. We must prepare and go after her. I managed to escape while she was protecting something she carried in her bag. The king was hesitant and refused to believe him, until one of his servants ran in and reported that the staff of authority, which they had stolen from King Obiajalu, was missing. King Aya was shocked. He stood up in fury. Now the truth was clear. So this is why she never hesitated to marry me, even when her father tried to stop her. She had her own plan all along. I was plotting against her while she had already plotted against me. We must stop her, kill her, and bring back the staff of authority. The journey from Agbada to Umuaya takes 48 hours, and 24 hours have passed since she left. We must catch up with her, even if it means meeting her at her father's gate. We must catch her, kill her, and bring back the staff. I must rule the world, King Aya said, hitting his chest. In the forest on her way home, the princess was already tired and very thirsty. She knew her father's men would arrive sooner or later, but she had to hold out longer. She stepped down from the horse to look for water. As she searched, the bird she had sent returned with a message from her father, stating they were on their way and would meet her soon. Her father urged her to hold on. The message gave her a glimmer of hope and more reason to continue. She hopped back on the horse and resumed her journey. Along the way, she noticed a signal behind her, a sign that Umuaya was closing in. She looked ahead and saw her father's men approaching. She rejoiced. When they met, her father, the king, rushed and hugged her tightly. You acted faster than I imagined, King Obiajalu said while hugging her. The opportunity positioned itself earlier than I imagined. The warriors were amazed to see the princess riding a horse so confidently. This was the first time they saw her ride a horse without falling off or shouting for help. Did the princess learn to ride overnight? One of the guards murmured. The princess immediately handed over the staff of authority to her father. The warriors were stunned. The commander gathered courage to ask the king, Your Majesty, what is going on? The king used the moment to explain to everything, how King Aya had stolen the staff so he could rule all the kingdoms. I knew telling the people would cause panic. Because no one would want to be under the devil's rule. Thank God, all will be fine now. The princess, in her bravery, has brought it back safely. We must return home. With the staff, I can cancel the marriage agreement I had with him. The king said happily, because by holding the staff of authority he can rule over any agreement without being questioned or challenged. Oh, now I understand why the princess made our king lose the chess game, one of the guards said. You're right. She is truly brave, another added. As they prepared to leave, the princess stood up and said, Father, we must not leave. King Aya and his men are coming after our people. We must stay and fight them. Let's end this today and free the people of Aya from his bondage and evil reign. Then the king and the princess must return home while we stay and fight, the commander said. But before he could finish, an arrow landed in front of them. They're here, he shouted. Protect the king and the princess. Archers, get ready. The people of Aya arrived, and the battle began. They overpowered the people of Agbada, killing many. The princess could not stand by. She escaped from her guards, snatched a sword from a warrior, and began to slay the enemies, this time not in disguise but as her true self. The warriors watched her moves. It was the same fighting style as the mysterious warrior who had helped them win past battles. Could that person be the princess? This is not the time for questions. Let's win the battle. They continued fighting under the princess's command. Together, they defeated all of Amuja warriors, except for their king. Commander Jack stood before King Aya, puffing his chest, ready to face him. But the princess stepped forward. Move aside, she said. I must face him both physically and otherwise. Jack refused. King Aya struck him with one powerful blow, sending him flying and leaving him helpless. I told you, the princess said, then turned to face King Aya. But he replied, let your father face me if he is a man. The princess refused. You must pass through me before getting to my father. She said, raising her sword. Don't say I didn't warn you, he added. Then they began to fight, physically, spiritually, and magically. The battle was fierce and seemed endless. At a point, the princess could no longer stand playing around with him. She struck him hard with both her sword and magic. This forced Aya to fall to his knees. I underestimated you, he said. In your next world, fear Princess Alikiaba. That was when the guards finally believed she was the one they have been searching for over the years. At that spot, King Aya and his men were defeated, and King Obiajalu took over his kingdom as well, making it the 20th kingdom under his rule. The people were all happy, for they preferred to be ruled by Obiajalu than to remain under the ruthless King Aya. The Agbada warriors now realized it had been the princess all along who had been helping them win their battles, while they received the glory and lied to his majesty. What could be our fate now? They asked among themselves as they returned home. The worst part is, it seems the king had known all along and had only been pretending while watching us fool ourselves. One of the guards said. It's better we resign on our own than be kicked out and punished by the king, according to the law, for we have violated the law that no one shall take glory for another's effort, one of the guards said. They passed the information among themselves and all agreed to resign once they returned to the palace. That night, King Obiajalu threw a banquet for his men as usual. He praised them as he always did, without mentioning the princess as the true champion. This surprised and worried them, making them anxious about what his plans might be. The guards ate, but not as happily or freely as they used to. Fear of the aftermath weighed heavily on them. None of them could sleep. They packed their belongings, and early the next morning, they appeared before the king, carrying their bags. They knelt before him and apologized. The commander spoke. My king, we apologize for having lied to you all these years. We claimed we defeated the enemies ourselves, but it was always the princess who helped us. At first, we thought she only cooked for us, but now we know she followed us into every battle. We know the punishment that awaits us. That is why we came to resign on our own. The king tapped him gently and said, Jack, you and your men have been doing great. I won't punish you for what you did. You are my men, and you have been the ones winning the battles, not the princess. They looked at him in surprise. The look on their faces clearly asked why he would say that. Then the princess interrupted, Which princess are you people talking about? Someone who cannot ride a horse? I am just the weak princess you used to know. Nothing has changed. It was then they realized the princess didn't want them to expose her secret, to protect herself from becoming a target for the enemies. They all swore to keep her secret safe. The king instructed them to return to their duty posts. From then on, they trained with the princess in secret, in a place where no one else was allowed to enter, except the warriors and the king. The end.